car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Welcome. This is The Attorneys. I'm Art Franklin. You know, there's a hidden danger that lurks in the walls of our past and our present. Asbestos. Yes, asbestos, a mineral that was once hailed for its fire-resistant properties, but became a public health issue because it can cause so many devastating diseases. But before we get into the topic, we want to remind you that there are attorneys at Hollis, Wright standing by right now who will take your call. It's free, it's confidential. All you have to do is call 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can do that right now, and someone from Hollis, Wright will get to you. Let's get to this topic of asbestos. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. When I saw the subject matter for the show, like many people out there, you see these commercials on TV from lawyers advertising for asbestos, and many people are like, I thought we got rid of all this stuff. How is there still asbestos? Like, what is going on with all of this asbestos advertising? And we've got a great guest. Lawrence Holcomb is here with us to kind of navigate these waters and talk a little bit about asbestos litigation and kind of what's going on out there. But Lawrence, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the nature of your practice and how you got involved in asbestos litigation.
So growing up, my parents had a business, a small business that actually took asbestos out of structures. So I grew up hearing around the dinner table, we're going to look at this building today, we're going to look at that one. Here's where we got to take it out. We got to take it out of the floor tiles, we got to take it out of the insulation, the rafters, the ceiling tiles, the walls, all over the place. So I actually grew up going out looking at these hazardous structures, figuring out how to make them safer by removing the asbestos. So once I went to law school, just kind of naturally gravitated towards it. It was something I was already familiar with, something I already knew about, and something I was passionate about, that my family had always wanted to make the world a safer place. So this felt like the best way to do it is to help folks that had been exposed to that asbestos.
Yeah. So as a matter of background, like, again, what is asbestos? What are we talking about?
Asbestos it's a broad term given to 6 minerals that grow in the earth, just like other rocks. And it has great heat-resistant properties, great friction-resistant properties, and just overall a good insulator. It's cheap, it's very abundant, and it was used in all sorts of different products over the years to keep the heat in or to keep the heat out or to keep friction or any type of substance like that from, well, let me start that over. to keep any type of substance out or in,
yeah.
Keep dealing with pressure, heat, things of that nature.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the clients that you represent. What are they suffering from? What conditions do they have that I guess you allege that they were exposed to asbestos and caused these types of injuries or conditions?
So there's 2 groups of conditions that folks can suffer from asbestos. One is the non-malignant group. That can arise as asbestosis or pleural plaques, which essentially is the asbestos fibers themselves. They're like little needles. And these little needles, they can be inhaled into the lung, and they can scratch up the lungs. Think of it as like scarring. So if your lungs are scarred, they're not going to absorb the oxygen nearly as well as they would otherwise. So unfortunately, it's a slow suffocation process over a period of time as the lungs get more and more scarred and are less and less able to absorb oxygen. That's what we call a non-malignant disease. A malignant disease is such as lung cancer or mesothelioma. Those are where the cells actually, the cancer cells actually replicate and spread throughout not only the lungs, the lining of the lungs, but to other parts of the body as well.
Yeah. Are they still using asbestos at all in building materials today?
You're not going to find new asbestos-containing products on the market today unless it's an extremely regulated type of product. They're extremely rare. So you're not going to go to Home Depot,
right,
Lowe's, and pick up an asbestos-containing product. It's not going to be in the brakes that you use on your family car or anything like that anymore. The danger with where asbestos is currently is that it's still out there. Whenever the EPA banned asbestos, and they did it kind of in stages, it didn't just go poof and magically disappear from the world. It's still all in these buildings. It's still in some old tractors, still in all kinds of structures out there in the world, and if you work in those structures or disturbing the asbestos in those structures, you have to be extremely careful with how you approach it to maintain safety.
So I'm wondering, what's the situation that someone, because of that, we talk about these buildings that still have asbestos in it, what would cause someone to get in contact with you because of that situation?
Well, to get in contact with me, you have to have an asbestos-related disease. As far as if anyone suspects that there is asbestos in a structure, they need to seek out an environmental consultant near them to have proper testing done, and certainly use safety protocols, which there's tremendous number of OSHA and EPA safety protocols related to the removal and handling of asbestos.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've always heard this, but my understanding is that in buildings that have asbestos, it's not a problem for people to be in those buildings and working in those buildings as long as the asbestos is not disturbed, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and what we mean by disturbed is that it's not under construction. I guess it's not coming off of the asbestos and people are breathing it in and things of that nature.
Right. So asbestos just sitting around isn't going to cause any harm. It's when the asbestos becomes what we call friable, meaning that you can crush it with your hand and it releases fibers into the air. If you're actually inhaling those fibers, that's where the harm comes from. But if it's just sitting there, it's like any type of poison or toxin that you might have sitting around the house. It's not poisonous until it gets in your body.
Yeah, so that's why when you've got renovations being done or you hear about somebody tearing down a building that has asbestos in it, that's where you've got to take all these precautions, hazardous material type suits, breathing apparatuses. Is that where you get all of that from, where these people have to wear all of that if they're involved in that activity?
Exactly, and highly recommend anyone out there that's working with asbestos, get it tested, get a professional to renovate it if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, and certainly if you're going to touch it yourself, take every single precaution you can, because it's very serious.
Yeah. Now, the people, though, I guess that you're primarily representing are individuals, I guess, that are probably up in age to a certain extent that may have worked many, many years ago at a plant or a facility and they were exposed to asbestos, perhaps because they weren't wearing hazardous material type suits, proper breathing apparatuses, and they breathed in those types of the fumes and things like that?
That's correct. There's a latency period of asbestos-related diseases, meaning it takes a long time from inhaling the asbestos to when it actually causes harm. And that's as little as 10 years, and some studies say it's up to 50 or 60 years. Yeah. So what we have to do on a regular basis when a client comes to me and says, I'm sick, how did this happen, is we have to go back through their work history, reconstruct their work history, the types of products that they were around and exposed to. And a lot of times that can be very challenging, but that's where the expertise of us, combined with the knowledge of the client, what they did in their life, we're really able to reconstruct it and pinpoint down how someone was exposed. And more often than not, they were exposed to a tremendous number of products, not just a few.
Just scratching the surface on this topic. When we come back, I want Lawrence to talk a little bit more about what a client can expect when they come to see him related to the process that they will go through, sort of the court process and things of that nature.
So we'll put a pin in it right there. The conversation is about asbestos. There is a lot to unpack on this topic, but we're going to get into it because we've got the expert with us here right now. Also want to remind you that as you look at your screen, you will see a QR code on that screen. That's another way that you can get in contact with Hollis Wright. We make it very easy for you to do that, also by providing that number for you as well, 1-844-LAW-TALK. It is a free, confidential call. You want to get in contact with an attorney, do that right now. The conversation is asbestos. You are watching The Attorneys. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a second.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, Call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
Hollis Wright has been handling workplace injury cases for years. If you've been injured on the job, give us a call. Our attorneys are standing by right now to give you a free consultation. And remember, at Hollis Wright, your result matters.
Asbestos, that is the topic of discussion as you are watching The Attorneys. We welcome you back. So glad to have you with us. Also want to remind you again that attorneys at Hollis Wright, they're taking your call. If you need any question answered, you can reach them at 1-844-LAW-TALK. And we put a pin on it, Carter, as we went to break on an area that you wanted us to continue on.
Absolutely. If a client comes to you and you determine that they've got a qualifying condition like lung cancer or mesothelioma, what is the process that they can expect to go through in terms of the length of time, court-related activities, things of that nature?
Sure. So there's two major tracks that we go down with each of these cases. And first off, we have to do what I was speaking about earlier, is kind of reconstruct someone's history. And that's just through a nice interview with them, figuring out what they've done, getting some of their records, kind of piecing together their past. Then, after we've determined what products or types of products they were exposed to, we look at the various companies or entities that are out there that might have compensation available for them. Now, there's two big groups. One is a group of companies that went bankrupt over the decades. And when they went bankrupt, they established trusts to pay out future victims of asbestos-related disease. Those have a pretty low bar of proof. It's signing an affidavit related to exposures, no going to court, no having a deposition, nothing like that. Now, if we identify some civil defendants that are still active in business that a person was exposed to, then we can talk to them about giving a deposition, filing a case in court. They can provide a short oral statement under oath about what they were exposed to over their lifetime. So that's really the extent of all the client's ever going to have to do. Yeah. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. After that, we get a lot of experts on board, industrial hygienists, doctors, experts, things of that nature, to kind of flesh out a case so we can take it up to a jury to tell a jury, hey, your company or this company did this to this person.
Yeah. Who are the entities in a general sense that you're making these claims against? Are they installers of the asbestos? Are they the manufacturers of the asbestos? Is it the person's employer? Who are the entities you're making these claims?
Most of the time, it's the manufacturer of the product. Sometimes it's a supplier or a distributor. Many states have laws regulating if you can go after a distributor or not. Sometimes there are contractors that will sue. Sometimes there are employers. A very overlooked group of victims is the spouses of the factory workers. A lot of times a factory worker will go, they'll get asbestos on their clothes, and then they'll bring it home and their spouse can get sick. So a lot of times we'll be able to sue the employer of the spouse who was actually working at the plant.
Wow, so it's a secondhand exposure similar to secondhand smoke exposure, I guess.
Exactly.
Wow, that's interesting.
In that regard, I'm just wondering what factors really affect the risk of developing asbestos-related diseases?
So there's 6 different types of asbestos. I'm not going to get that deep into the weeds right here. I don't know if we have enough time. But there's 6 different types, and they're essentially some of them are more toxic than others. So we look at the dose, how much asbestos somebody breathed, what type of the asbestos they breathed, how long they were breathing it, and if it's the number of different factors.
Yeah. Talk about the statute of limitations on these. I've always thought this was interesting because you've got exposure that may go back many, many years, but then the person doesn't get the injury or the condition like lung cancer or mesothelioma until years later. Does the statute of limitations play a part in these cases?
It does, but the statute of limitations, or the time you have to bring a suit, doesn't begin to run until you're actually diagnosed with an asbestos-related disease. It's not when you were exposed to it, it's when you're diagnosed. And that varies state to state. Some states are as little as 1 year from date of diagnosis, some states are up to 5. And it's going to depend largely on the state that you were exposed to the asbestos in. So it's very important you contact someone right away to discuss your case.
Yeah, hopefully we're doing better as a society in terms of people's habits of smoking cigarettes, but back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there were a lot more people smoking cigarettes. How does smoking affect these cases, especially if you're dealing with like a lung cancer diagnosis?
On a lung cancer, it does make it a little bit more difficult of a case. We're able to actually get CT scans and x-rays, and if our expert interprets that there's asbestos in your lungs, that the asbestos and the smoking works together to increase your risk of lung cancer. On a mesothelioma case, your smoking history is completely unrelated.
Okay. So it could be a contributing factor, the smoking, but if there are people out there that have lung cancer and they have a history of smoking, they still should contact somebody like you to do further investigation to see if they also have asbestos in their lungs?
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Wondering what type of jobs that might be a high risk for developing asbestos-related diseases.
So what we've seen over the years is a lot of shipyard workers, any type of industrial type workers, or any type of trade for building houses, building commercial buildings, anything like that. Essentially, if you're manufacturing anything in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it's more likely than not you were exposed to some form of asbestos. Yeah.
What should the individuals out there look for in terms of symptoms that they may be exhibiting that perhaps should alert them they may have an issue that they need to get addressed? In particular, what are the symptoms of mesothelioma or lung cancer that they should be looking out for?
Anytime someone has a shortness of breath or coughing, wheezing that just won't go away, if it's worsening over time, any chest pain, anything related to what you think might be your lungs, you need to seek a doctor immediately and get some proper testing done, because the earlier you catch it, the better your chances are.
Yeah, and this is an important point, especially with the statute of limitations, because he indicated that it's not until the time of diagnosis, but some creative lawyers that are out there might try and argue that they were on notice at an earlier date that they had the injury or had the problem in order to try and start the clock running. So that's another reason to go ahead and get to a doctor if they're exhibiting symptoms.
And if you feel that you have some symptoms related to asbestos, what should you do?
Immediately seek out a doctor and ask for proper testing.
All right. We're going to take a break right here, but we're not finished. We're still unpacking this subject of asbestos, and we want you to stay with us. And we also want you to go ahead and get in contact with Hollis Wright if you have a question. And you can do that number of ways. There's a QR code right there on your screen. You can reach Hollis right there. You see a number of numbers scrolling at the bottom of your screen, 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can reach someone there, but there are couple other numbers there. You can text Hollis Wright. We are making it so easy for you to get in contact with us. We're going to continue this conversation, wrap things up. Glad to have you with us. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a few.
Thank you for watching The Attorneys each Sunday night, where we come to your living room to provide free legal advice in a confidential, off-air setting. Unfortunately, with the number of calls, texts, and emails that come in during the show, we can't always get to everything. But know this, Hollis Wright is open all week long. You call us at 844-LAW-TALK and we're going to answer your question for free. Thank you for watching The Attorneys, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you soon. We love this state and its great people. People that are worth fighting for in their lowest moments. It's what drives our lawyers to do what we do. We're here right now to fight for you. At Hollis Wright, your result matters.
Welcome back. You are watching The Attorneys, and we're talking about asbestos. I want to remind you, though, as we continue this discussion, that you can reach Hollis Wright on all the social media platforms. Make sure you follow us on X, which was formerly Twitter, of course, on Instagram, and also on Facebook. You'll find a lot of fascinating material there, topics that we've discussed, and also you can get some information on some of the people involved at Hollis Wright. Also, remind you to follow Hollis Wright on the numbers that you see on the bottom of your screen. You can text those numbers to reach someone at Hollis Wright and call 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can reach an attorney. It is a free, confidential call. If you have a question, they will answer that question. They stand by throughout the show. So now, back here, as we're talking about asbestos, we've got a special guest with us.
Yeah, Lawrence, I'm interested in, you're based out of Birmingham, but you have a national practice when it comes to representing individuals who have sustained an injury suspected from asbestos exposure. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, where are these cases filed and pursued by you? And what's made me think about that question is you could have a client that you sign up who lives in Arizona, but all of their exposure took place in Missouri, or I'm just throwing a couple of states out there. Like, how does that work out in terms of the jurisdictions or places where you pursue these claims?
There's a large docket of these types of cases in St. Clair County, Illinois, which is just across the river from St. Louis. The court's very familiar with these types of cases. It is able to get them through the system very efficiently, make it as fast and easy on the clients as absolutely possible. There are some limited instances in which we will file a lawsuit either where a client lives or where they were exposed. And that just kind of depends on the client's preference, if they want to, how hard they want to push to trial, if they're willing to give a deposition, things of that nature. But we file all over the country.
In representing clients, and it may be a combination of both, but are you primarily dealing with the treating physicians or doctors that actually diagnosed, say, lung cancer or mesothelioma, who are actively treating your client, or do you go out and hire your own set of experts who have more familiarity perhaps with these types of claims to pursue the lawsuit?
It's a little bit of both. We always like to retain the treating physician so that to the extent we have to have a jury trial, they're able to actually come into the courtroom and explain to the jury what their patient is going through, our client, what they've actually gone through step by step. We also do have some very esteemed experts across the country that help us out giving us their opinions. They're not on our payroll, they're not on our staff, they're independent experts that we'll contact and we'll ask for their professional opinions, and they give it to us. Some Harvard-educated folks, Johns Hopkins folks, very, very knowledgeable specialists to help us convince the jury what actually happened to these people.
No. I think it's a sensitive question to address with potential clients, but I know that it's one that you have to address with your clients, and that is a lot of times I would think that when these clients come to see you, if they've got mesothelioma or lung cancer, their life expectancy may not be very long. So what is the life expectancy on average with people that have these types of conditions, and what happens if they pass away during the pendency of their lawsuit or claim?
So everyone's life expectancy is going to be individual to them based on a number of circumstances. There are a couple different types of mesothelioma which we haven't really gotten into very much today. There's pleural mesothelioma, which is the lining of the lungs. There's peritoneal mesothelioma, which is the lining of the abdominal cavity. And even rarer is testicular mesothelioma. There's a much shorter life expectancy with pleural mesothelioma than the other two. If a client unfortunately passes away during the pendency of the lawsuit, their spouse or next closest relative will often pick up the torch and carry the case forward on their behalf.
And I guess, does it convert into a wrongful death claim at that point? Because when they're alive, you're pursuing a personal injury claim based on what they've been through and seeking compensation for their injuries. But does it then convert into a wrongful death claim where you might have a combination of an injury claim and a death claim?
It does, and it depends on state by state. Sometimes what's called the survival action exists, where you're talking about a personal injury that it actually survives the passing of the person. So we'll have a survival action and a wrongful death action. Some states it's just a wrongful death action. But what we've talked about today is we have to get the work history of the person that was exposed to be able to make these cases work. Yeah. So while life expectancy might be short, no one wants to call up an attorney, but it's very important that they reach out to an attorney and get that work history done, get the papers signed before they pass, because otherwise that evidence is gone forever.
Right. Art, I know you had a question about regulation or regulatory bodies.
Absolutely. As we are, you look at the asbestos that's out there and buildings that you acquire and things of that nature. I'm just wondering, what are the legal provisions that are in place for not only the use of asbestos, but also the removal of asbestos?
There are a tremendous number of both EPA and OSHA regulations covering the handling of asbestos. If you're going to handle it, you need to be aware of all the regulations. Beyond those federal agencies, each state has agencies that regulate the handling of asbestos, and not just the handling of it, the disposal of it as well. So if you're going to be tackling a home project on your own, and you're doing the sampling, and you're going to wear the gear, know that you've also got to dispose of it properly, because it's a highly regulated product right now because of how dangerous it is.
Yeah. What do the numbers look like right now in terms of cases being filed and pursued now relative to what it was 5, 10, 15 years ago?
So thankfully, the number of mesothelioma cases per year is on a gradual decline, because less and less people are getting diagnosed each year because these products were phased out over the decades. Right. So thankfully, those numbers are going down, but it's still around 2,500 to 3,000 cases of mesothelioma nationwide each year.
Right. We've talked a lot about buildings and asbestos in buildings and things of that nature. Are there any other products that are out there on the market that currently have asbestos in them or found in them?
A big one that's overlooked is cosmetic talc. And I'm sure everyone out there has heard the Johnson & Johnson verdicts, but it's not just Johnson & Johnson baby powder. It's in any type of fragrant powder, talcum powder, that people used over the course of decades. And I've gone into clients' house and not been able to identify their exposure and say, hey, let's go check your medicine cabinet. Let's check under the bathroom counter. Pull out a bottle of something, and sure enough, ingredients talc. Right there. That's how they got exposed. Yeah.
Lawrence, this has been a great show. Thank you so much. Enlightening subject matter. Still something that's really plaguing society out there. The last comment about it being in talcum powder and things that we're buying over the counter is a bit concerning, so the public really needs to be educated about that fact.
Actually, we learned a lot.
Yes.
Learned a lot. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. And we also appreciate you stopping by and joining us here on The Attorneys. And make sure you go ahead, put it on your schedule. Join us again next week, same place, same time, for another episode of The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.